Hello, welcome to this next special session, and thank you so much for the very kind words, Rudy. And it's, of course, a very fascinating conversation that we're going to have now in the next 30 minutes. And it's very apt that we have a lot of young students as well to hear this next session about, of course, one of the places most renowned for education, but also, of course, for spirituality. But before we begin the conversation on his book, I want to start out by asking you a personal, light-hearted question, Abhay, on what is your first love? We just heard you're a master of a lot of stuff, but poetry, art, or writing, what's your first love?
Poetry, of course. Nalanda, in fact, began with poetry. So I had written a poem on Nalanda, and the publisher of Penguin Random House came to me, can I write a book on Nalanda? So I almost jumped, I had edited books and written poems earlier. So I said, do you mean to edit a book? She said, no, to write a book of history on Nalanda. So I said, no, I cannot do that. This is not what I do. I'm a poet. And this is how the conversation began.
Okay. Well, these days, of course, Bihar is in the news. It's being talked about a lot, but we're not going to get into that reason about why it's being talked about these days. I'm sure you all know. But we're going to, of course, talk about Nalanda, which is located there, and how it changed the world. So firstly, there are a lot of mysteries of Nalanda. Was that the main purpose of yours to uncover them through this book? Or what was the main intention? Every author has an intention behind a particular work of theirs. What was yours?
Well, so first of all, I come from Nalanda. I am from Nalanda. It's in Bihar. Many of you may not know. I think someone I met this morning asked me, where is Nalanda? So Nalanda is located, for your kind information, in Bihar.
Whereabouts in Bihar?
It's pretty close to Patna, about 100 kilometers south west of Patna, and it's a city which is very ancient. It's even more ancient than Buddha. And I, as a child growing up in Nalanda, had no idea about Nalanda's contributions in shaping our modern world. When I used to visit the ruins of Nalanda, I was always told that there was a university here, Mahavihara, and Xuanzang, the Chinese traveler, actually came to Nalanda, and he wrote that about 10,000 students used to study there, and they were taught by 1,000 teachers. And it was burned and kept burning for 6 months. And the tallest building there, some of you might have visited the ruins of Nalanda. And the tallest building, which is there right now, they told us that this is the library, the burnt library. And no one actually, told us the real thing about Nalanda. This was all we were told. I often visited with my parents to the ruins, but beyond this, we had no idea what Nalanda stood for. When was it founded? Who founded it? And why was it founded? Why did it become such a famous university? Who taught there? And what contribution, in fact, Nalanda has made in shaping our modern world? So all these questions I had in mind, and I thought that, once, I had written a poem without exploring all these details. So slowly I started working on them, and a book came out of it.
Okay. Now you, of course, delve into this particular next question of mine in the end of your book, but I want to ask it in the first half of our conversation on how you believe Nalanda has actually not just changed India, but you believe it's changed the world. How?
Well, so first of all, today the most universal language the world uses. What is that universal language? Let me ask you, the audience. What's the most universal language the world uses today? No, 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 no.
I can hear
It's the-
English, Spanish, Chinese.
no, it's the language of numbers. No, not Sanskrit. It's the language of numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's called decimal system. And the decimal system consists of a very important number, and that is 0. And where does the 0 come from? Right. So now, so 0 is one of them. If you have heard of a great philosopher called Nagarjuna, and he gave us a philosophy. The philosophy is called Shunyata. It's also known as Madhyamaka. And Shunyata is, what is Shunyata? No, Shunyata is not exactly emptiness. I mean, as we know in English, Shunyata is the emptiness of inherent existence. It comes from Buddha's original philosophy of Pratitya Samutpad. Yes, you're right, ma'am. So what Buddha says that, the reality is empty of independent or inherent existence. So there is nothing in this world which has been independently created, not even God. God is also, there can be only God when you are there. There can be day when there is night. So it's that duality, and from there Buddha's, philosophy of, or his 4 noble truths come. It's where the scientific reasoning begins. So that's one of them. But the second thing, many of you would have studied in universities. Where does the idea of a university come from? But what is a modern university? What makes a university university? So it's not really. Knowledge teaching is there. I mean, even a college has a knowledge and teaching. School has it. The academies of Greek, Greece had it. Greek, Plato had an academy. There were schools there, but we also had gurukuls. But universities are not simply, teaching and learning. University is defined by the key word in university is universal. And it is in Nalanda for the first time you have a written evidence, historic evidence of universal students coming from all across the known world, and teachers coming from all across the known world. In fact, Nagarjuna, who is considered the philosophical founder of Nalanda, his chief disciple, Aryadeva, was from Sri Lanka. And the universal, not only teachers and students, but the universal number of subjects being taught there. And the policy of universal admission, it was not that only Brahmins will enter the University of Nalanda. Nalanda Mahavihara had a policy where there was a Dwarpala Pandit, and anybody could go. It does not matter, you are, anybody, and you have to engage with the Dwarpala Pandit. And the success rate, as Swensang writes in his memoirs, that it was only 20 to 30%, 2 or 3 out of 10 would enter the university. So the idea of university itself, but not only this much, not universal, but the architectural plan of a modern university comes from Nalanda. If you go to the quads and visit Oxford and Cambridge today, if you see the quads and courts of Oxford and Cambridge, you will exactly find the courtyard plan which originates at Nalanda. You can see it for yourself. So, and how does it travel? It travels through Central Asia. Today what you call a college is actually, college comes from madarsa. And what is a madarsa? Madarsas are Buddhist viharas. So I was in Uzbekistan 2-3 weeks ago, and I was going to visit the Registan in Samarkand, and I was going to see the madarsa of Ulugh Beg. And before entering it, I was clearly, I had this sixth sense that this madrasa must have the courtyard plan. And what is a courtyard plan? Courtyard plan is like a courtyard. You have a courtyard, rectangular courtyard, and around this courtyard, you have the living cells for the monks or the students, or those who are studying. So if you go to Nalanda today, if you see the ruins of Nalanda, Mahavihara, you will see there is a central courtyard, and you will see all around it, there are cells, multi-storied cells actually. And as I had guessed, Ulugh Beg's Madarsa has a courtyard and double stories, 2 stories, in Uzbekistan now. But Madarsa, the idea of Madarsa travels then to North Africa, and then Arab world, and then North Africa, and then to the West. So this is how the first college is in Paris, for example. It's called Collège des 18, or the College of 18, is only founded in 11th century. And Oxford, Cambridge, and in the University of Bologna, which is known as the oldest university in Europe, are not actually, they did not begin as universities. They began as universitas, which are completely different from the idea of a modern university. So this is all in this book. There is much more.
Amazing. Yeah.
But these are some of the like the tip of the icebergs of Nalanda's contributions.
You spoke about some of the
our world.
global impact, but now I want to draw you back, since we are at Himalayan Echoes, on the impact of Nalanda on the Himalayas as well, and on this region. Buddhist significance of it, and what else? And that's, of course, what makes this session special as well. The way that this festival is curated is every session or every speaker, I think every individual here has some connect with the mountains. So what is Nalanda's impact on the Himalayas as well, Abhay?
Well, so, the form of Buddhism which is in the Himalayas today, it's mostly Vajrayana. Tibet, for example, Tibetan Buddhism is even in Nepal, and in this part of the world, the Buddhism which is practiced is known as Vajrayana Buddhism. But where does this Vajrayana Buddhism come from? And so you have to go back to Nalanda for that. So let me take you 2,600 years ago from now. This is the time, Gautam Siddharth is leaving Kapilavastu in Nepal. And he does not go to Himalayas. He goes to the most cosmopolitan city of that time, of 6th century BC. New York of that time, you can say. He goes to Rajagriha, the first capital of Magad, which is just 10 to 15 kilometers from Nalanda. And it's in Rajagriha he meets his first 5 disciples, whom he gives the first sermon in Sarnath. And Rajagriha at that time is full of philosophers. It does not have just Buddha himself, but it also has Nigantanath Putra, whom we know as Mahavira. It has Sanjay Belatiputta. It has Ajit Kesha Kambali. It has Makkali Gosal. All the great philosophers of 6th century BC. They are all in Rajagriha. Gautam Siddharth, he's not able, he meditates at Pandava's hill in Rajagriha, but he's not able to find the right path. So he moves to the banks of a very ancient city called Gaya. And on the banks of Niranjana river, he gets enlightenment. And from there, he moves to Sarnath, which is next to another ancient Indian city, Varanasi or Banaras, where he gives his first sermon, turning of the wheel, what we call the Dharma Chakra Pravartan. And then what does he do? He comes back to Rajagriha. He doesn't go to Taxila, for example, or any other place. He comes back to Rajagriha. Why does he do that? Because Rajagriha that time is the most powerful Mahajanpad of India. And if you want to spread your philosophy, you would like to have the king by your side. So he gets King Bimbisar by his side. King Bimbisar is shrewd and diplomatic. He, lets Buddha feel that he's a Buddhist, while for Jains, he's a Jain, Uh, and it's his son, actually, Azad Satru, who actually kills his father, assassinates him, and he becomes the next king of Magad. And it's during his son's Ajat Satru's time that Buddha passes away, and the first Buddhist council is held in Rajgir. But what is interesting, here, that in Rajgir, Buddha meets two very interesting people from Nalanda, and they are known as Sariputra and Mogliaina. Any one of you have heard of him, Sariputra? So it's the Sariputra, Sariputra is, so once I was in Bihar and I was going to meet the governor, and I learned from his office that he's traveling to Thailand. So I was wondering what is he doing, what the Bihar's governor would do in Thailand, And they told me that, he has taken the remains of the holy relics of Sariputra and Mogliaina to Thailand. He's accompanying. And the remains are treated as a state guest, so a minister has to go, governor has to go, and they are received with proper protocol by a minister in that country where it travels. Being from Nalanda, I had no idea about Sariputra. Nobody had told me who Sariputra is. And Sariputra, when Buddha comes back to Rajgir after Sarnath, Sariputra is the person he meets. Sariputra is elder than him. And he comes from a very established Brahmin family. And he's seeking enlightenment. And he has made a pact with his childhood friend Mogliaina to have that they will attain enlightenment together. And when he hears Buddha, he instantly feels that he is on the path of enlightenment. He achieves the first step of enlightenment, which is known as Sotapana in Pali, in Theravada Buddhism. And Buddha, he not only joins Buddha, but also gets 500 more disciples of his guru, Sanjay Belatiputta, to come and join Buddha. Buddha is mightily pleased, and he makes Sariputra his first chief male disciple. And his childhood friend, Mogliaina, his second chief male disciple. And 300 years later from this time, when Emperor Ashoka returns to Rajgir from Patliputra, the capital of Magad has now shifted to Patliputra. And he raises a stupa for Sariputra. And today, when you go to Nalanda, which I told you in the beginning, what guides tell us that's the burnt library, that's actually the stupa of Sariputra. And stupa of Sariputra becomes the nucleus around which whole Nalanda University develops over a period of time.
Quickly, because, we had also have students here, and, we were talking about education at the start. What is the impact or the learnings of Nalanda that we can implement in our education even today in our country? You spoke about how Nalanda continues to stay relevant, and it's had, of course, a global impact, regional impact here too, of course, in Bihar and that area. But what about the education sector? What can we draw from that time into our education policies and, set up today?
Well, so Nalanda had interdisciplinary learning, and this has been adopted recently by NEP, the new education policy. So the students went to Nalanda not to study one subject, they went there for enlightenment. Nalanda was designed to push the boundaries of knowledge. So the teachers and students, they lived together. It had the greatest library of the first millennium CE, the greatest sutra library. To copy just one text of that sutra library, can you imagine what kind of library it had? Xuanzang, the Chinese traveler, traveled almost for 14 years to copy just one text called Yogacara Bhumi Sutra from Shangan, the then Chinese capital. And then he stayed at Nalanda for 5 years. Nalanda was also, so Nalanda was well equipped. It has a great library. These are some of the things which I think we can learn from today. that education should be a public good. Nalanda was supported by a number of royal, number of dynasties. From the Guptas to Harshvardhan to the Palas, they all supported Nalanda. So education as a public good, we must treat education, provide all the. We could have digital Nalanda, for example, a resource available to all the students.
Any sort of civilization and any sort of big university also has a rapid rise. You've already delved upon, of course, some of the reasons why that rise happened. There's more, of course, in the book. But how did the decline happen? Just tell us a bit about what contributed to the decline. We're almost out of time, but I want to quickly delve on this as well.
Well, so Nalanda had, there was a declining royal pattern is by 11th century, because India was itself going through a period of tripartite struggle by the 10th century. You had the Palas in the east, you have the Rashtrakutas in the south, and Chauhans in the west. They're all fighting with each other, and India becomes politically, economically, militarily weak. By 12th century, you have the invasions happening from the northwest of India, and you have the Muhammad of Ghor, who is very ambitious. He defeats many Muslim rulers before he enters northwest of India, and he ultimately defeats in the second battle of Tarai, Prithviraj Chauhan. And he has three key generals. One of them you are familiar with, those who live in Delhi, is known as Qutubuddin Aibak. After his name, Qutub Minar is named. Founder of the Delhi Sultanate. The second key general is Bakhtiar Khalji, who travels east. And, there is a book, a Delhi-based historian, Minhaz-e-Sirazi. He writes about Bakhtiar's exploits in the east, and he gives a vivid description of Bakhtiar Khalji going to Odantapuri, which is another monastery, Buddhist monastery, next to Nalanda, just 10 kilometers from there, and destroying it completely, burning it down, and only with 200 horses. In fact, Bakhtiar was very ambitious. He wanted to control the trade, Tibetan trade, which was happening from Tibet, Tangan horses. These were very valuable horses, and he also tries to cross the Brahmaputra and go to Tibet, but his troops get flown away in the waters of Brahmaputra, and he's ultimately assassinated by his own second in command. So these are the key factors. India's weakening of political, economic, military weakening of India, invasions from the northwest, and also Buddhism becoming Tantric Buddhism, which becomes indistinguishable from Hinduism.
Okay.
And you have the Nath, the Naths, the Nath Sampradaya is the link between actually the Siddhas, the Mahasiddhas of Nalanda. Okay. You have Matsyendranath and also Gorakhnath, who are the links between, Okay. So slowly, this Nath Sampradaya, which is actually a sect of Buddhism, becomes a sect of Hinduism.
Okay. Fatafat style, rapid fire style, you've heard these questions. As I said, if you want to, get more of your answers, it's all there in this book, and the book, of course, is available, and Abhay will be happy to answer some of your other questions off the stage as well. But as I said, I started by talking about Bihar, and we've not mentioned as yet, and we will not either, the reason why Bihar is being talked about these days in the country. But, unfortunately, on television news these days, we're just talking about who's winning what and how many seats and who are the kingmakers, etc. But बिहार में और भी बहुत कुछ है. बिहार में जो खाना है वो बहुत खास है. बिहार का लिटरेचर, उस पे तो आपने एक अलग ही किताब लिख दी है अभय जी. What makes Bihari literature significant in 60 seconds, if you can tell us before we wrap up?
I think Bihar has a very rich diversity of literature, written in 10 languages. I've edited, in fact, a book called The Book of Bihari Literature, which has translations from Magahi, Mathili, Bhojpuri, Hindi, Urdu, Farsi, Sanskrit, Pali, Badzika, Angika, and so on. So I think there is in fact here a book called The Fool Bahadur, which is my translation of first Maghi novel. It's story of a lawyer, a Mukhtar in British India. I think you should. It's a satire. It's a political satire. I think it's a book worth reading, as it feels that the book has been just written yesterday.
Well, a fascinating session, of course, and such a pretty backdrop. I'm happy none of you looked behind and were looking only at us. So that means the conversation was also pretty and interesting and, of course, enriching. Okay, one last question. We just have, time for one audience question. We'll ask a student. Since it's all about learning and education in Nalanda, जी एक student का सवाल ले लेते.
Hi, sir. My question is, did the students or the philosophers at Nalanda question or sort of revolted against the arbitrary ways of the society or religion at that time?
Sorry, once again, please.
Yeah. Did the students or the philosophers at Nalanda question or sort of revolted against the arbitrary ways of the society or religion at that time?
Well, Nalanda had this, a very established system of resolving any dispute through debate and discussion. So as Swen Sang writes, that in the whole history of Nalanda, there was not a single incidence of violence. All the disputes at Nalanda were resolved through the debate and discussion. The debate, they practiced a particular form of vad and sambad, and used recursive argument methods, in which you break the arguments into, sub-arguments, and then further into sub-arguments, and so on. And at Nalanda, there was not a single case of revolt in the sense that of, violent revolt.
Let's leave it at that. Thank you so much to all of you for being a very engaging audience, and thank you so much to Abhay Ji for a fascinating session. And once again, congratulations to the organizers of Himalayan Echoes for a fabulous 10th edition of the festival.
25 लाख का हॉस्पिटल बिल है, इतने पैसे कहाँ से आए?